it's me, Unkempt Snuggle Pepper, back for another critique. And this one is from someone who wanted an overview of their portfolio. So, they say, hey, I want to improve my semi-realistic art. My goal is to create illustrations in my own style that are aesthetically pleasing and tell a story. I'm aware I need to work on the art fundamentals, but I'm looking for more specific advice on how I can improve. What exactly should I focus on practicing, and how can I make my art more professional and interesting? I've not received much feedback or critique on my art, so any advice or other options would be appreciated. And then they link their portfolio, which I have selected 2 or 3 pieces. I don't know if we'll talk about all three to go over today. And this one is Kate and Dagmar, cute little dragon-y couple. And then we also have this as a commission that they did. It's a guy with a gun. I believe it's World of Warcraft commission. He has the eyebrows, so that's cool. So my first set of advice is to stop using line work. I know, but Unkempt Snuggle Pepper. Yes, I know. And here's why I would say you would to stop using line work. I think you're holding back your painting. You're too dependent on lines to define the form rather than using value to define the form. I also think that by using lines, you're missing a few opportunities. What do I mean? So when we're looking at these two, the line work isn't bad, but we have this bright light right here. It would give them a great highlight, and by using a line there to separate them from the background, we are no longer seeing this bright highlight that comes from being backlit. We are now divided by a line. And it's okay to have lost edges. That is one of the places I would say that a lost edge is okay. Now, this reminds me of the artwork by Stephanie Brown, who does a lot of fantasy-esque couples, and they are either kissing or about to kiss, being backlit by a beautiful sun or forest or one of those things. So I would say my first advice is to remove the line work. My second advice is to do master studies. So if you're trying to emulate her style, I would go ahead and do a master study. I would pick one of your favorite pieces and I would try to copy it. Now, if you do this, you should not post it on social media unless you ask her permission, have her permission, and give her credit. With master studies of long dead artists like John Singer Sargent or Rembrandt, that is a totally different story because they're dead and they're not on Instagram. I mean, maybe, but it's someone else posting their artwork. It's not them. So I would definitely take that into consideration. My next point is back to this guy. We have this really cool light hanging out back there, and we can give him a really awesome bright turquoise rim light, but he has this dark blue line instead. See how cool that would? You did it on the trees. How cool would that be? Now, if you're going to do it on the trees, you also kind of have to do it on all of the leaves because they would be catching the light as well. So, I'm going to assume you use kind of a leaf brush to get in here. But yeah, all of these leaves would also have that blue light on them. My next advice kind of goes against the first advice of not using a line. If you are going to use a line, I would go ahead and do cell shading rather than fully illustrate something. But I think cell shading has value in the sense that you are now very focused on shadow shapes and how you can convey a three-dimensional object only using one color. I highly recommend checking out Marco Bucci here on YouTube. Look into his videos about great shapes and shadow shapes. There's one where he draws a profile of an elf and he only uses 2 values in order to do that. Definitely check that out. Because what I'm seeing is in some of your work, So like his shadows in here, and some of her shadows, those are hard. But when we get into here or we get into their faces, it only becomes soft shadows. And while there are a lot of soft value changes in the face, they're not all soft. Not everything is a soft shadow. We do have some hard light. Being able to cell shade is going to give you more information and less fear of hard edges, because I think you know that shading needs to happen, and I think you know kind of vaguely where to put it, but you aren't 100% sure. And so doing studies where you only shade with one value will help. In addition, I would look up different folds of clothing. I noticed that you kind of understand how clothing folds, but you aren't 100% sure yet. And my understanding of clothing folds is that you have places where there's tension and then places where it relaxes, like in the armpit, you'll have wrinkles and all of that good stuff. Now, my next point, getting more familiar with colors. And this piece has probably two really big points. One, white is not white and black is not black. You have shaded her white dress with only white and gray, and you've shaded all of his black with only black and gray, which is not accurate. So in her dress, I would actually bring it to emphasize more that she's wearing white. I would actually lean kind of towards almost a cream color. At least in the highlights. And if this and this are metal, they should be reflecting the green of the forest as well. And I would put a little bit of that green into her shadows to show that they are part of the environment. And warm up her white a little bit with a bit of cream. Now with black, there are so many beautiful shades that we could have put in here. We could have made them a bit more purple, and then they're also contrasting. If she's white but with a little bit of yellow and he's black but with a little bit of purple, that further shows that they are complementary colors and they're across from each other on the color wheel. Now, when it comes to skin, skin is never just a mid-tone, a highlight, and a shadow. These are very dull colors for skin. It is a little bit more saturated. And a lot of people will go overboard on this. A little more pink. A lot of people will go a little bit overboard on this. And one of the things I noticed when looking at one of the Stephanie Brown pieces is that this highlight, where the sun is a nice, oh, it's not quite that yellow. It's a nice warm flesh tone. Right, we have all this sunshine. And yes, of course, their little dragon stuff will still be there. But we have this big bright highlight, and for it to be almost completely white, they're also going to be a lot brighter, at least in here. And then through this color, where his nose is, he's going to have some subsurface scattering, which is the fancy name for when you hold your hand up against the flashlight and you can see all the blood beneath the skin. I mean, in addition to having a bright light behind them, that generally tends to be, the nose tends to be more red than the rest of the face. And you have a little bit. You have a little bit. She has some shadow in there. But I think you're a little a little timid when it comes to adding that extra bit of color. And at this point, the heater comes on and the audio isn't really great, so it's voice over me just in case. So, what I do from this point on is make the campfire light a little bit stronger and have it wrap around that side of his form. This gives a lot more dimension to the character, and it stands out more because I made him darker. And since I made him darker, I can add that really cool turquoise rim light on the other side, and I think that overall it bumps up his coolness a notch. In addition to that, we also have more of a focus. We can put the focus on the gun in the face rather than necessarily the entire body, which I mean, he's cool all over, but now we have a focal point as well. Now to recap. First, I would recommend not doing line work. Personally, I put a sketch down, I put a layer of color under it, and I put a layer of cell shading under that, and then I merge them all. My sketch layer isn't clean at all. I don't worry about it. I go in and I paint over most of it anyway, so it doesn't even matter. I just like having that layer there a little bit longer than I would in traditional art. My second suggestion is going to be to do master studies. Find artists that you enjoy and copy their paintings in order to learn how they use creative problem solving to create the pieces that you enjoy the most. I find that these are some of the most helpful things that we do as artists. And third, there's a few artists on YouTube that I highly recommend. Number one is Marco Bucci. He takes a lot of art fundamentals and breaks them down into very digestible bits. Another is Istabrak. She does a lot of digital portraits, and although she focuses in black and white, she does have a video on color and the use of pink and yellow and blue throughout the face. It's an older video, it's a little further back there, but she is also very good at being able to articulate why things are the way they are and what the artist needs to improve on. I think by watching her series, we can learn a lot in general about the art of portraiture. The third artist I would recommend is Paint Coach, also on YouTube. And while he uses oils to create portraits, I think a lot of the principles that he talks about can be applied to digital art as well. Now, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing or leaving me a comment about your favorite YouTube artist. And, I have a buy me a coffee if you feel so inclined. Keep up the good work, keep doing art, and I'll see you next time.